Hi, how are you? Welcome. In this video, we're going to talk about spoilers for the second book about the couple Shane and Ilya, The Long Game. So, let's begin. Troy sat down heavily with a sigh and opened the bottle. I saw you in the lobby with that purchase heading for the elevators, Ilya explained before Troy could even wonder how she knew what he'd been up to last night. Is this something you do often? Ilya asked. No, Troy said miserably. We played tonight. I know, it was stupid. Yes, Ilya wanted to be angry with him, but it was difficult when Troy looked so pathetic. It won't happen again, Troy said in a small, tired voice. Ilya noticed the glistening of tears in his eyes before Troy could look away. I'm sorry, Troy said. His voice cracked, and he pressed his lips together. The last vestige of Ilya's anger toward him evaporated. This is your city, isn't it? Where are you from? Yes, Troy said, barely more than a whisper. Your personal life is your own business. If it doesn't affect your game, I don't care. The coach will say the same. However, Troy still didn't know the coach. Are you going to tell him? Not this time sounded a little threatening, but Ilya couldn't help it. She needed Troy to understand that this couldn't happen again. Troy didn't say anything, just stared at the Gatorade bottle, probably hoping Ilya would leave. Now, Ilya had to deliver the news she suspected Troy didn't want to hear. Also, your father is in the lobby. Troy's face went even paler than before. What? Yes, and he introduced himself to me. He probably wasn't able to hide what he'd felt about that interaction. However, if Troy needed someone to get rid of his father, Ilya could bear to talk to him again. He's still there, but I can tell him you're busy. Troy declined her offer, insisting that he would take care of his father himself. Before leaving the room, Ilya paused and said somewhat awkwardly, Family can be difficult. Parents. Troy seemed to understand. Yeah, sometimes. Ilya nodded and left. It was possible she had more in common with Troy than she'd imagined. Shane wondered as he walked around the dark runway between Montreal and Ottawa. How many times had he made this journey in his life? He could almost do it with his eyes closed, and in fact, he was in danger of doing so now. It was past midnight and he was exhausted. He could have waited until tomorrow morning to make the trip. He had just finished a game in Montreal, and Ilya had played that night. His plane back was still in the air, which meant it would be at least another couple of hours before Shane saw him. He was listening to Russian lessons while driving, which kept his mind sharp as he concentrated on translating as much as he could. Shane couldn't wait until morning, not when it had been 2 weeks since he'd seen Ilya, even if all they did was sleep. But it would be worth the trip. Ilya was a bad influence, but maybe Shane had needed that in his life. He needed him as much as he'd needed someone to stroke his hair, to make him laugh, to show him how wonderful it was to see butterflies. Shane heard his name, but he couldn't place where it was coming from. Something touched his shoulder. Shane opened his eyes, his first clue being that she had fallen asleep on Ilya's couch. Ilya was standing beside him, smiling gently, still in his suit. Shane glanced at him. Sorry. It's okay, Ilya said. He sat down next to her. His hair was a mess of curls. Shane fell into his arms. The usual feeling of relief washed over him as they kissed for the first time in 2 weeks. I missed you, Ilya said. Yes, they said, inviting each other to embrace for a long moment. Shane buried his nose in the crease of Ilya's neck and inhaled deeply, enjoying his familiar scent. This shirt feels nice. It's silk. It's luxurious. Shane pulled away and examined Ilya's face. You look tired. Well, it wasn't me who was sleeping on the couch. Shane frowned, as he always did when he was being sarcastic, when Shane needed him to be serious. A rough trip, Ilya. He looked at the sofa cushions. You know it wasn't good. Yes, Shane knew Ottawa had lost all 4 games of the trip, but that wasn't what he meant. Are you okay? Ilya admitted, I haven't been sleeping well. Then let's go to sleep. Shane stood up and held out his hand. He took it, and they went upstairs together. The next day. I found you. Shane almost fell off the stability ball he was balancing on. Hearing Ilya's voice, he steadied himself and managed to maintain his standing position with his knees slightly bent on the large blue ball. Impressive, Ilya said to himself in the mirrors that lined one of the walls. Shane watched him pace the floor of the sprawling home gym that took up most of Ilya's basement. How long have you been there? 2 hours. He leaned against the weight rack next to Shane and their eyes met in the mirror. Like Shane, Ilya was wearing only workout shorts and was barefoot. Shane said, "I don't know. You made me lose track. Good morning, by the way. You look like you slept well." Shane had been up for over an hour, but he'd let Ilya sleep. Good, full of energy. Ilya's gaze flipped across Shane as he said this, and Shane wobbled on the exercise ball. "Are you hungry?" Shane asked. "Always." Ilya moved away from the weight rack and stood in front of Shane. His lips twisted into that smile that always spelled trouble. "You're the perfect height for kissing now, taller than me even. Don't." Ilya leaned forward. "Come here." Ilya tilted his head and brought his lips close. When it became clear that Shane was going to lean in, Shane huffed and closed the distance. For a magical second, they were kissing. Then Shane fell forward and Ilya took a step back. "Thanks, idiot," Shane grumbled as he got up from the floor. Ilya was laughing, one hand on the mirror. "Did you come to work out?" Ilya walked over to the weight rack and sat down on the bench. Shane looked at him. My God, his boyfriend was so beautiful. Shane and Ilya went to look at butterflies in the gym. "What about you?" Shane asked when he stood up and pointed at Ilya. "Later," Ilya smiled. "We have all day." Shane gave him a sweet kiss. "Okay." December. "Do you have many friends?" Galina asked. "Yes, many friends," Ilya replied quickly, slightly offended. It was his 3rd appointment with his therapist, and he wasn't sure he was making much progress. Spoiler alert! Leave your comments below. What do you think about this spoiler? If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Bye!